Hi, this is Stephen Mead, lifelong entrepreneur, business owner, and global speaker. Over the years, I've read hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours developing what I call the bullseye belief system. And I've used that system to develop my own companies, as well as help others learn to be specific, targeted, and focused to get exactly what they want in life. Again, I'm Stephen Mead, and this is the Bullseye Guy Podcast. Stephen Mead here again, excited to be back talking to you guys about everything specific. I am known as the Bullseye Guy, and what we're going to do today, we're actually going to talk about a couple of tips around being specific. And one of the other podcasts that we did, we went through all 10 steps of this, what I call a bullseye belief system. And being entrepreneurial, I like to talk a lot about goal setting. So today we're going to spend some time on how to be specific, how to do goal setting. And I'm going to give you guys some examples that are real world examples, not only ones that happened to me, but ones that happened to other friends of mine, and sort of try and help you get a mindset around how to be more specific in goal setting and how to determine outcomes. And hopefully it'll be helpful. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is very entrepreneurial, but it also is good for sales. It's good for executives. It's good at all different levels. And we're going to jump right in. So when I talk about, again, being specific, the first tip I gave or the first step I gave back in episode 2 was about begin with the end in mind, kind of design your destiny. And I ask people all the time, what do you want in life? And they look at you with a kind of haze, or they come to me and my favorite example says, I need an investor, right? We deal a lot with startups. I need a VC. That to me doesn't give me anything. There's no resonance there in terms of trying to be specific is what's my outcome? What do I want? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about examples. I've got a couple different friends, and I used to talk to them about how to be specific, how to set goals. And a friend of mine, I won't mention his name because some of these guys we haven't gotten clearance on, so we'll just tell the stories. A friend of mine I was going through, I was like, all right, let's be specific. Let's figure out, what do you want? What do you want in a 10-year goal? And he said, I want to have $100 million, right? And again, I'm not starting out with money, but everybody talks about money and they're not specific. And I'll give you what I mean by that is he wanted to be $100 million. And I kept saying, let's be a little more specific. No, I've got it. $100 million. And that was his goal. No problem. A year later, for his birthday, his sister gave him a little package. And he opened that package up, and it was a license plate for his car. And that license plate said 100 MIL. 100 million. Because that's all he talked about. So he asked the universe for 100 million, and he got a license plate for his car that said 100 mil. That's what I talk about. How do you be specific? I have another one. Friend of mine. Again, I like doing this because I like helping people. And I kept trying to say, be more specific. And her goal was to be a millionaire. She wanted to be worth $1 million. All right. And she was not that I'm ageist, because I'm not. She was a little bit older at the time. And she kept saying, I want to be worth $1 million. I want to be worth $1 million. And again, we were trying to do this around her being an entrepreneur. And she didn't really want to be worth $1 million. It was about more with what she wanted from her life and her next chapter to be, but I couldn't get her to come around. And what invariably happened is she rolls around to December, Christmas of one year, and her father, who happened to be much older than her, gave to her as a gift an apartment building worth $1.2 million. She became a millionaire with an apartment building that she had to move into and manage. Wasn't what she wanted. Her definition was she was trying to become an entrepreneur. She wanted her own business. She wanted her own lifestyle. She wanted freedom from her father and the financial encumbrances. And she set about and did the wrong thing. And then I'm going to use my example. And mine is what will lead us into sort of how we do some of these things. Again, if you've heard my story, when I was 22, over the course of many years, I read 357 books. I believe that's the number on sales training, psychology, motivation, all of these masters, the Tony Robbins, the Tom Hopkins, the Jim Rohns. We used to pick these guys up and bring them in to come talk to our groups. And it was fascinating. I remember picking up Tony Robbins once when he had first started. His first book had come out called Unlimited Power. And I was fortunate. I got to pick him up at the airport, spend time, take him. And he's asking us, oh, is your group moving towards or away? And was asking us all of these tips that fortunately we had read his book and were implementing, so we knew what we were talking about. But within there, one of the great books, one of the master books that people talk about is Think and Grow Rich. And it talks a lot about goal setting. And again, this is where I started building this bullseye belief system of becoming more specific. And I made a big mistake. And I'm going to share with you that mistake because I talk a lot about it in not only colleges and companies, but also what I've learned along the way. So when I was 24, I got specific in my goal setting. And one of my goals, again, I talk about it a lot, is I wanted to have a company worth $1 billion. And I need to be clear, I'm not money motivated. I think money makes you, again, more of what you are. If you're an ass, you're a big ass with money. If you're nice and generous, you're super generous. If you're insecure, you're more insecure. To me, it's more about what you could do for other people if you have it. But the goal was to have a company worth X. And I do this a lot with students, and I'll go on a whiteboard and I'll write this big, huge X on. And I'll say, hey, when I turned 33, the company I created, it was an e-commerce company. It was worth basically $980 million. And this is where I challenge people. Was I specific? Did I get what I asked for? The universe gives us what we ask for if we work for it, but we have to learn how to be specific as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as salespeople. The company was worth 980. And again, I write on the board, X dollar 980. And I turn to the students in the class and the companies I'm talking to, said, did I hit my goal? And they'll look at, yeah, or, oh, you're so close. Well, 980 to $1 billion, it was close enough. But there was a problem. And then I write Y. I write a big Y on the screen. And next to the Y, I write a question mark. As in, why is Steven, me personally, why am I only worth 8% of the public company? Because it was public, I didn't own the company. The company was worth that. I owned a percentage of that larger company. Number two, I didn't realize, and again, I'll talk about this in a future podcast, I was under what's called a 144 restriction. Any of you that don't know about stock and investing and getting acquired in public companies, you're restricted in 12 months a lot of times where you can't sell your stock. When these companies go public, it's called a lockup period. And all of the employees are locked up and they're counting the days for 12 months when they can finally sell. I was in a lockup period from 99 to 2000. Those of you that are old enough, you might remember that time frame as the bubble, the tech crash. We had a company that was worth $1 billion at one point, and then it wasn't. It went up and then it went down. And during that time when it was up and down, we were locked up and couldn't sell anyway. So the point when I write why is Steven worth so little, a percentage of it? Why can't I sell my stock and why is the stock crashing? The point of being specific was a company value had nothing to do with my personal net worth. Had nothing to do with the value. And that's what being specific's about. And I'll give you one more example because I like giving examples across different industries to show how these systems transport no matter what. I have another good friend of mine. I used to have a lot of fun. I used to go talk at SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild for entertainers. And SAG has a program called Life Raft. And Life Raft was all about helping the actors become better. And it makes sense, right? They're throwing you a life raft, trying to help you get better. And what I did was I did it for 2 or 3 years, and there was 3 or 4 people on a panel. And I was in the marketing panel of how do you market and make yourself better. And the first person was usually somebody, I'm trying to remember now, I haven't done entertainment in a little while. The first person was around social media. It had just started. How to use social media. And how do you build a Facebook page? The second person was around postcards and how do you write postcards. And the third person was around a casting agent who would give tips. And then the fourth person was me saying none of that stuff works. The difference between being proactive and reactive is proactive as an entertainer is I'm waiting for an audition or I'm trying to find one. Reactive means, wait, it's the other way around. Reactive is waiting for something. Proactive is I'm going to go get what I want. Sorry about that. It was a little inverted. How do we become proactive, not reactive? And so I was doing this exercise, and the guy was so funny. He said, I can do it. I said, great. Let's be specific. And he went through this technique and system I have. And at the end, his goal was he wanted to be the #1 comedian in the world. And I look at him as I'm prone to do with people and said, I can't help you. Well, no, it's specific. I want to be the #1 comedian in the world. And I looked at him again and said, I still can't help you. Well, what do you mean? That's specific. And putting my best entertainment hat on, which I don't have a good one, but I tried. I said, well, let me ask you a question. There's probably a difference between being the #1 comedian, which I could probably tell you tomorrow, poof, you are, and I don't remember the guy's name. I said, you are X, and whoever this guy's name was, and any of you guys can look it up. Maybe I'll have the studio guys do it. There was a dance called Evolution of Dance. This guy had 180 million views on YouTube. He was the #1 comedian in the world if you viewed him and judged him based on YouTube views. Nobody in the world's ever heard of the guy. But on YouTube, he was #1. That was the point I tried to make. I say, you are X. Well, whoever that guy's name was, I remembered it back then. And everybody in the audience says, I don't know who that is. I go, well, he's the #1 comedian in the world on YouTube. And the guy was sitting in the second or third. Well, that's not what I meant. You asked to be #1. You didn't define what #1 was. Do you want to be #1 like a Jerry Seinfeld on a television show that runs for 10 years and has this? You want to be #1 like an Eddie Murphy who had movie, like #1 like whom? Television, movies, on stage. They're all a little bit different. And we just don't know how to be specific. And the last one for entertainment, I think, is a fun one. A friend of mine, we were doing this exercise, and she said, I want to win an Oscar. And she'd been in entertainment, trying to be an actor. I think it's gender specific now. It's not actresses, it's actor, where it's gender neutral. But her goal was to win an Oscar. And I looked at her and I said, you don't want to win an Oscar. No, I really want to. And I said, no, you really don't want to win an Oscar. And again, she just emphatically, I do. I'm going to win when I know it. And I looked at her because I knew enough about her background. And again, guys, this is all designed to help you think through the process of being specific. I looked at her and I said, you really don't want to win an Oscar because I guarantee you'll win an Oscar within 2 years. Maybe 3, but within 2, I guarantee you'll win an Oscar. And there's silence in the room and everybody's like scoffing because she's barely done anything work-wise. And what she didn't understand was she had helped form one of the largest entertainment companies in the world. And I won't mention the name because some of these things are out in the public, but she had helped form this company that has done amazing work. And she left that to become an actor because she wanted to pursue the craft, not the creation. And I looked at her and I said, I guarantee within 2 years, this company X will probably win an Oscar that gets delivered on Saturday. Now, those of you that don't know, Oscars aren't just Sunday night. Those are the big Oscars. There's Oscars on Saturday as well for best set design on a nature video or best suit on a documentary. Like nothing against them, but they're not the premier, I want to be the best actor. There's Saturday Oscars. And their company won an Oscar. And I said, what's going to happen is you're going to be on stage winning an Oscar for best documentary soundstage or something. And you're going to hold this Oscar in your hand and say, this sucks. It's not what I wanted. But you won an Oscar. So how do we think about these next level down of specificity is what people don't know how to do. And that's where I think we get lost a lot of times as entrepreneurs, as salespeople, and trying to set our goals. We just don't think in a deeper premise. And when we talk about that, again, this is where I talk about being financial independent. And that's where I start. Like the first thing I want to start with people is financial independence. I want you to have a number in your mind. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a salesperson, a family, our goal should be to be financially independent. And when I start with that, I go, well, have you ever thought about being financially independent? People, of course I have. What does that mean to you? Think about it for a moment. Each of you, what does it mean to you to be financially independent? Do you have a definition? Do you have a goal? The actual definition in terms of the financial industry is having enough money saved to live off of the interest to maintain your standard of living. So it's pretty simple. We can reverse engineer it. What's the standard of living you have now or you want to maintain? Is it $3,000 a month, $5,000, $10,000? Is it $100,000 a year, $1 million? I don't care what the number is. It's your number. But you reverse engineer it. We'll use easy math. If it's $100,000 a year, you need at least 8 to 10 times that because there's almost no interest going on anymore. So you need at least $1 million or more saved to live off of the interest to maintain your standard of living. People don't know what they want to be when they grow up. They don't know what they want to be when they're retired. They don't know what they want to be when they're financially independent because we're not specific about it. We need to come up with a specific goal, a specific number. And if you're working right now, you've got great financial instruments. You have 401ks, you have different investments. The stock market's been going amazing. There's different investment vehicles we'll talk about in another episode with blockchain and crypto assets and bulletin board. There's like all kinds of things you can do. But if you don't know what the number is you're trying to reach, you don't know what you have to do to get there. So it's about learning how to be specific for financial independence. What's our specific goal? What's our specific number? And how do we get there? And that's what it means is financial independence is, do I have enough money saved to live off the interest? And once I know that, then I can reverse and figure out what my goals are. So Bullseye System has a bunch of different connotations. It's across all of these different areas, all of these different aspects. And what we're trying to do with you over the courses of these podcasts is weave in examples as well as news, as well as opportunities. So news and opportunities, being specific, learning how to invest. I'm not totally switching gears on us now, but there's all kinds of different targets for investment. All right, I'm not giving investment advice, but I like for people to know how to be financially independent, how to be specific. So I sort of reverse engineered it. I gave you guys examples of being worth money and then winning an Oscar or being number one. All of these things are goals that we may want in our life. But if one of our goals is being financially independent, how do we learn how to go about that? How do we do it? We're going to reverse engineer it in an example really quick. And I want to teach you guys something called DCA. And DCA stands for dollar cost averaging. All right. And what that means is, again, this is a specific goal. It's target. If I know I want to be worth $1 million when I retire, I have to reverse and say, all right, what do I need to do to invest every month? What's a dollar amount I need to invest? And I need to figure out, and there's all kinds of mathematical tools out there. There's all kinds of systems. There's all kinds of calculators to be able to do it. But dollar cost averaging is a discipline to teach you how to become financially independent once we know our target and our goal. All right. And this is the way dollar cost averaging works. And it's a tough one. And I love it because it's simple, but it goes across what we're prone to do within the industry of investing. All right. And I'm looking at Eagle and some of the guys here. Do you know what dollar cost averaging is? No? All right. This is a fun one. If I'm investing money, again, this isn't a financial instrument, but if I decide to invest $100 a month in a stock, right? If my target and my goal is $100, I may invest in a stock. I may invest in a crypto asset. I may put it in a mutual fund. Mutual funds to me are a great vehicle. They're the most diversified, safe investment for the normal middle Americans. But what invariably happens is the markets go up and down. Every time we turn around, we're like, oh, the stock market's up. Oh, the stock market's down. The industry, the news people confuse their own premise of what up and down means. The stock market right now, I don't even know the number. It's probably 25, 26, 27,000, which doesn't mean a lot to you and I. It just means it's up really high. If the stock market drops, by 2 or 3 percentages. It might drop 4 or 5,000 points. That's a lot. But in comparison to 25,000, if a stock market is at 25,000 and it drops 2 or 3,000 points, that's a drop. But compared to 25,000, it's small. 20 years ago, the stock market was at 10,000, and when it dropped 2 or 3,000, that's a bigger percentage. So the news is caught up in this. How much does a stock drop? What happens? If you're going to invest long-term, dollar cost averaging says whether the market's up or down, we're going to invest the same amount every single month. And it requires discipline because in an investment, you don't lose money unless you sell. So when the markets are down, if you're investing in one company, that's a risk. In a mutual fund or something diversified, it's not. So the way dollar cost averaging works is if I'm putting $100 a month in and the stock costs $25, I'm trying to use easy math. $100, 25, that means I buy 4 shares of that stock. And the goal is hopefully it's going to go up. So option A says over the next 2 or 3 months, that stock goes up $25, $27, $30, $40, and each month your $100 is buying more, but it's buying less shares because the price is going up. Pretty simple. Let's say the market crashes and that $25 drops all the way down to 10. What happens is we panic. We want to sell. Oh my gosh, the market's down. I'm losing money. I need to sell. If you bought stock at 25 and you sold at 10, that is a loss. The way dollar cost averaging works is fascinating. If you put $100 in that same month, when the stock market dropped and that stock is at $10, 100 divided by 10 means you just bought 10 shares. Think about it for a minute. You're buying shares as the markets go down. When it comes back up, when it gets back equal to $25, you're not at the same dollar amount. You've actually made more money. You bought 10 shares at $10. When it's back up to $25, you're not back at even. You're ahead of the game because of the way you invested. And that's what gets so frustrating when people within the industry, and especially governments and politics, they don't want average consumers like us to control our own money. They want to scare us that, oh, the stock market goes down, investing's risky, and we are forced to put it into the government with Social Security and things like that. There's a premise called a self-directed IRA, and if you guys haven't looked at it, again, my goal is to get you financially independent, right? This is one of the steps. There's going to be many, many more. Self-directed says, I'm going to decide where my money goes, but I want to be in a diversified. Again, I love mutual funds. Mutual funds is nothing more than instead of putting $100 in one stock, right? And we'll go back way in the internet. That $100 could have gone on Amazon. Amazon at one point was about $98, dropped down to $9. People panicked, thought it was going to collapse, and now Amazon is Amazon. But it just as well could have gone into another one. My friends Bill Gross and the guys at Idea Lab did some great companies back then. One was called eToys. Very famous for anybody that's been around the internet. It was a toy portal for web. It was a website for toys. Made sense? Didn't work. If you had invested in one company, it could have been Amazon. It could have been eToys. Every day we turn around, there's different opportunities. A mutual fund takes your $100 and puts it in 30, 40, 50, 100 different companies. So your dollars are diversified. That to me is the trick. How do we diversify dollar cost average towards a target and a goal? Financial independence is finding what you want to be worth. What does it take to invest? And then again, now how do we use a bullseye? Well, mutual funds give us all of these different opportunities. There's technology funds that are very high risk. There's international funds. There's different funds. I don't want any of you guys to get overwhelmed. Financial services are easy if you take the time and effort to understand it. Have some discipline. Invest on a monthly basis, no matter what that market does, when it goes up or down. If it goes down, you're just buying more shares. It's like buying things on sale. And the current market's a great example of that. It's 27,000 now, I think. It was down at 9 or 10,000 a couple of years ago. It's been an amazing return. It'll happen again. Markets go up or down. Don't get caught up in it. So again, focusing on what we want to accomplish, focusing on
what we want to do as a goal, focusing on how we become successful resonates across all of these different areas. And financial independence is one we'll probably spend some more time on because a lot of what we've heard about recently is around cryptocurrency. And again, I'm covering a lot of ground with this one, but for this particular example, cryptocurrency is nothing more than another type of glorified investment. Whether you're investing in gold, stocks, mutual funds, they're all risky, but they all come with different risk profiles. We just have to pick what our risk profile is. Everything's about narrowing down and being specific. So, going to wrap up with some things on targets and about the goals that we want to have. When I talk about begin with the end in mind, figure out your financial independence goal. Really spend some time on it. Think about, what do you want your lifestyle to be like? If you're married, if you have kids, what do you want to have at retirement? We want to create self-sufficient people, economies, entrepreneurs, but we don't know how to do that. Once we figure out what those targets are, let's get disciplined on holding ourselves accountable to saving money, putting in our effort, and doing a diversified program. That's all it is. Dollar cost averaging is a great, simple tool. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with a little bit more around emotions. People make decisions emotionally and defend them logically. And why am I saying that here? Well, again, it covers a lot of things. Investing is emotional. Being an entrepreneur is emotional. Having a family, I'm sure, is emotional. Right? We have to learn how to manage our emotions. So when we talk about investing, when the markets drop, we get panicked. We get emotional. We decide, oh my God, it's down. I want to get out. When we become an entrepreneur, we're emotional and we're influenced by what other people say. And what I mean by that, here's the last point, and then we'll cover it and we're done. Visions, values, and leadership. Everybody has values. And for the longest time, I didn't know what values really meant. People would go, what are your values? What are your values? And so I had to actually study it. I still don't really understand what values mean, but I found a great way to show values are important and they really don't matter. But I don't mean it that they aren't important to you. Here's what I mean. And we used to play along. Hopefully you guys can play along in the audience. How many of you have heard the phrase, birds of a feather flock together? Right? Birds of a feather flock together. That's my value. Oh, but there's also another value called opposites attract. So I was a little confused by that one. So I did a little more research. Your word is your bond. But then there's another one that says, don't believe everything you hear. Well, but you have to see it to believe it. Great, but looks can be deceiving. One of my favorite, out of sight, out of mind, right? Relationships. Oh, out of sight, out of mind. You'll forget about them. Oh, but absence makes the heart grow fonder. Here's what I learned about values. No matter what value you pick, somebody's going to have an opposite value system than yours. Somebody's going to have an opposite belief system from yours. If you say you want to be worth $1 million or $1 billion, somebody else is going to tell you you can't do it. If you think you want to invest in crypto or mutual funds, or somebody else is going to tell you that's a dumb idea. If you want to be an entrepreneur, somebody's going to tell you you can't make it. You've got to find the people that have your values, not everybody else's. No matter what side of the equation you're on, there's always a different opposite equation. And Einstein had some great quotes. One of them was, if you teach a fish, if you teach a fish to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life believing it's stupid because fish can't climb trees. But then in another one, he says, everybody's a genius. Einstein himself had conflictory values because we all do. Be specific. Pick a value, pick a target, pick what you want to be in life, but just learn how to do it in a specific manner. So thanks for joining me today on the Bullseye Guy podcast. I'm Stephen Meade. For more information about this program, visit my website at www.thebullseyeguy.com. Again, I'm Stephen Meade with thebullseyeguy.com.